Please join us on our midwinter trip to Yellowstone National Park. In early July, we got a call from our Minnesota friends, Chuck and Barb, asking if we would be interested in meeting them in Yellowstone the following winter. Chuck has done this trip on 2 previous occasions and told us how much he enjoyed it. The idea had great appeal to us, especially since it was 104 degrees in Springville at the time we got the call. Our previous trips to Yellowstone had all been in the summer, and we found it too crowded for our liking, but Chuck assured us that the winter is a totally different ballgame. While Chuck and Barb would be entering the park from the north, the western access through the town of West Yellowstone is the most efficient for folks coming from California. The town of West Yellowstone caters to snowmobilers and makes sure that they leave their streets only partially plowed to accommodate the sleds. Prior to meeting our friends in the park, we had made plans to go on a snowmobile tour from West Yellowstone to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone and back, a distance of 90 miles. Here I am, getting ready to depart. We rented snowmobile suits, mittens, boots, and helmets from Backcountry Adventures, the company leading the tour. And it's go time. The park boundary is only a short distance from town. West Yellowstone is in Montana, but most of this trip was spent in Wyoming. Early on, we encountered several herds of bison foraging near the river. This large bull seemed quite comfortable. The first stop of the day was at a warming hut that featured restrooms as well as hot drinks. The next series of pictures are in the falls in the canyon of the Yellowstone River. We'd seen them in the summer, but this was quite different, as large portions of the falls were actually frozen at this time of the year. Though the air temperature was in the teens and the sled was zipping along at 35 to 40 miles an hour, we managed to stay warm thanks to the snowmobile suit and the other gear that we were wearing. Here's the view from Ginny's seat behind me. The sled had heated grips for me and a pair of heated hand grips for her as well. We left at 8:30 a.m. and returned to West Yellowstone about 4 o'clock. It snowed for most of the day, but that did not present any problems. It only added to the fun of the journey. The following day, we met the Backcountry Adventures snow coach in the parking lot of the West Yellowstone Chamber of Commerce, where we would leave our truck for the next 4 days that we would be in the park. The roads in Yellowstone are not plowed in winter, so to get to the Old Faithful Snow Lodge where we would be staying, you must go via snow coach. Most of these are modern vehicles with oversized tires, and you'll see examples of them later in the slideshow. We were fortunate enough to be transported in an old Bombardier snow machine. These vehicles used to do most of the work in the area years ago, but have for the most part been replaced by the modern coaches. We were accompanied on our ride to the Snow Lodge by William and Madison, 2 young people from Bozeman, Montana, who were celebrating their 2nd wedding anniversary. That's Madison in the coach. The ride in took about 2 hours, and the scenery was spectacular. From a distance, these geysers almost looked like tornadoes. We did not stay in the main lodge. Rather, we were in what they call a western cabin. It was quite comfortable and served our needs exceptionally well. Notice the large column of ice coming off of the roof. Lots of icicles everywhere. This is part of the interior of the Snow Lodge. We ate our meals at the lodge. Here I am with friend Barb. And this is her mate, Chuck. More Chuck and Barb. We had only been at the lodge for a short time when we got to see our first Old Faithful eruption of this trip. Interestingly, there were 3 bison near the geyser, and they seemed totally unperturbed by the eruption. The following morning, Ginny and I went on a half-day wildlife tour that wandered along the Madison River. These are the modern snow coaches that I mentioned earlier. These extra-large tires run at very low pressure and easily handle the unplowed roads. The following photos show examples of the landscape and the animals that we encountered that morning. Unfortunately, we did not see any wolves, though we saw lots of tracks which served as evidence of their presence. We were told that since the wolves were reintroduced into the park in the mid-90s, they have run off all of the elk that formerly ranged here. There are still lots of elk, but they're mostly found in the more northerly areas of the park. We saw lots of majestic trumpeter swans while in Yellowstone. We came across this coyote in the afternoon. While coyotes are quite common where we live, these guys had much thicker coats and looked more robust than what we're used to seeing. The bison often travel on the roads as it's easier for them than trudging through the deep snow. The snow coaches yield to the animals, who sometimes cause roadblocks. Another bison encounter on the road. While out walking one afternoon, Jenny and I ran into these Canadian geese who were silhouetted in the bright sunlight against a backdrop of thermal steam. Despite these signs, which are posted along most trails, people still tended to get closer than they should to the wild animals. Again, the scenery in this area is magnificent. This lodge is closed in the winter, but accommodates large crowds in the summer. Sunset in the cabin area. And sunset at the snow lodge. The next morning, Jenny and I signed up for a snowshoe tour that would take us to the Firehole River and back. Here I am putting on the snowshoes. The view from one of the bridges that we crossed. The fellow who was pointing is our guide, Patrick. He was very knowledgeable and helped us to better understand the nature and the ecosystems of the area. Ginny on the trail. Patrick said it would be okay for us to keep the snowshoes for an additional day if we wanted to. We took him up on his offer, and the next day we climbed to a spot called Observation Point that looks down on Old Faithful and the lodge area from the mountaintop. A footbridge across the Firehole River. This is the lower portion of the trail to Observation Point. At the bottom of the climb was a sign saying that it was only a half a mile to the top and an elevation gain of 200 feet, but it seemed steep to us, and we were huffing and puffing when we got to the top. By a stroke of good luck, once at the observation point, we only had to wait about 5 minutes for Old Faithful to erupt. From the observation point, the trail looped around past Solitary Geyser and then back down to the valley floor. As the sign says, this is Solitary Geyser. It did not erupt while we were there. This is a bubbling cauldron adjacent to the geyser. More bison on the floor of the valley. At the end of that hike, I had little mini icicles on my mustache and beard. And Ginny had frozen eyelashes. On our last day, I got up early and went for a walk. I had my phone, but left my camera at the cabin. As it turned out, this was sort of a mistake. It was an absolutely perfect morning, and as the sun rose, it presented some amazing photo opportunities. Once again, through pure luck, Old Faithful erupted as I was taking the walk. It was quite a sight. I was continually taking my gloves off to take pictures, and after a while had zero feeling in those fingers. But I couldn't stop taking photos. This is Castle Geyser. We left the snow lodge shortly after 11 a.m., and the following are some miscellaneous shots taken on the way back to West Yellowstone. Our Tacoma had spent 5 days and 4 nights in some really cold weather, but was happy to see us and started right up. Not knowing what the weather would be like, we took 3 days to drive the 1,100 miles between home and Yellowstone, and we did the same 3 days on our return trip. This vacation far exceeded our expectations, and we both decided that we will do it again next year.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this slideshow. We hope you enjoyed it.